So how many of you here are already doing acceptance test driven development at your work? Okay, how many of you here have never heard of this idea before? Okay, we've got a few. Well, let's get started. And my battery's dead there too. Great. Okay. I want to take a real quick detour just to level set a few things before we get started. In that, one thing that I've noticed a lot over the last 2 or 3 years, which is that this whole word agile has taken on a lot of new meanings. And so I talk to people all the time. They say, "Oh, I work on an agile team." I say, "Oh, really? Well, what does that mean?" And sometimes what I hear is just a little strange. So I want to tell you a little bit about what I think it is first, and then I'm going to talk about how this practice kind of fits into there. But if you don't understand the first part, it's maybe won't make as much sense for the rest of it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the nature of software development, and you may have seen this, just a graph like this before. Can you see that? No. Come on. This is going to be great. There is a line on there. There's more than one line. And we have a letter T at the bottom, which stands for time, and the letter F going up the side, which talks about features. This is your project. This is the project I want you guys to deliver today, okay? So what is the first thing I usually tell you? What's the first thing you learn about a project whenever you kick it off? What's that? The date. That's the first thing we learn. When is it due? Okay, well, let's draw a line there. There's your due date. Are you ready? What's the second thing that you're going to learn? The features, the scope. Okay. You guys have done this before, haven't you? So that's what we have. We know when it's due, there's your date, and we know what's supposed to go on it. Now we just got to hit that little X up there that you can't see, right? So, before Agile, we had a really interesting approach toward solving this sort of a problem. And we would usually kick things off by doing something called an analysis phase. And this is where we try to really understand what it is that we have to deliver. You know, we might write some documents, and the nice thing about analysis phase, and this was one of the sweetest phases of a project timeline, was that it was time whenever developers got to like lazy around a little bit. We didn't have too much to do. We'd pop in and out of meetings every once in a while, usually sleep through them, right? But the good thing was that whenever that deadline came for analysis, guess what? We hit it every time. We were never, ever late. We would, 100% of the time, we would hit that date, and we would move on to this next thing called the design phase. And the design phase, we get to draw pretty pictures and talk again about what it is we're going to build and how we're going to build it. And lo and behold, when we'd hit that milestone on the Gantt chart, we were done. And we never, ever missed the date. And we'd order pizza, and we'd have a party, and we would celebrate. Look at us, guys. We're halfway through the project, and we're still on time, still on budget, right? Halfway through, and we're still on schedule. This one's going to be different. I know it is. And so, what comes next? Development. We start to write some code, and we realize very soon that those designs we thought were ideal and perfect, those architectures, they don't really work out, but that's okay. And what comes after that? This wonderful testing phase, right? And the theory goes that we're going to develop this, we're going to hand it off to testers, they're going to do a quick test, and we're going to get it out, and we're going to make that mark. We're going to be able to deliver on time. Does that happen? No. So it's right at about, can you guys see anything up there at all? Okay, good. So that little red dot that just appeared there, that's usually about the first time that we would deliver software. We'd get to see a little bit of it, and we'd say, oh, things are going to look good. We're going to have this line that just goes straight up to that X, right? Right? A little bit later, we deliver a little bit more. Yeah, it's not looking so good. Let's just work harder. Weekends, right? Right about at this third dot, that's when we inform the testers, you know those 2 months that you said you needed? You'll be lucky if you'll get 2 weeks. But we still expect it to be perfect because it's your job to make the software perfect. And it's also at about that time that the developers start updating their resumes. And one other thing happens on that third dot, which is that's when we tell management we're going to be late. We're going to be about 3 months late. The interesting question was, why didn't we know we were going to be late like a week earlier? You know, a week earlier you were on schedule, but now 1 week later we're 3 months late. How does that happen? Well, some guys came up with this idea called Agile. And in essence, what they said was that we're going to do all these things that you see here, except we're going to do them kind of small. And we're going to focus on small pieces of functionality, and we're going to try to deliver software real rapidly and look at it and talk about it. That very first dot, we're going to deliver something. It's not very much, but it's something. And we're going to look at it, and we're going to talk about it and say, is this good? Is this what we wanted to do? And what should we do next? You see, the real power here comes in the fact that in the first approach, by the time we discovered that we weren't going to make the date, there wasn't very much we could do about it. There was very little we could do about it at all. Our choices were, you know, beat people to work and make them work on weekends, you know, and start a death march, not test it, lower our quality standards to try to get something out the door, or deliver months late. With Agile, what we could do is we could start to have the conversation earlier and say, it looks like we can't deliver everything that's been requested. But why don't you, business, product owner, whoever you are, work with me to prioritize what it is I'm doing so that we make sure at any time that we're working on the highest value card. Everything I'm doing needs to be the highest value so that whenever we do hit that date, and I'll deliver on that date, but what you're going to get is going to be the highest value quality software possible. Does that make sense? So that's the essence of Scrum right there that you see. That's what it's about. So now on to my talk. Wow. Even on Scrum teams, there are some things that can happen, or Agile teams, there are some things that can happen to cause us not to reach our full potential and velocity. Who can think of what some of those might be? Nobody? Technical debt, a great one. What else? External dependencies. What else? Vacation. I wish I could have one. Requirements changing. Yes, up in the... Too many meetings. No one has that. What else? Yes? Turnover. Like Apple? Yeah. Cool. Well, I want to talk about a couple of them. These are all good things, and these are all right. All correct. The two I want to talk about real quickly. Can you read that? Man, that's a big screen. Application defects and rework due to unclear or changing requirements. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about these two things, which, from my experience, very frequently slow us down. The team starts delivering, or the developers start delivering defects, and the next sprint or the next iteration or the next days, we're spending time fixing defects instead of writing new features. The other one is, wow, I thought I knew what you wanted. I thought I knew what what you said was the highest value thing, but when I delivered it, it was something different. Guess what? Back to the drawing board, right? Oops, that was fancy. What is a defect? A bug. What is a bug? A cockroach? Is it possible to test all the defects away? I'm always amazed whenever I hear something like, you know, we've got a lot of defects, we need to test more. You know, the truth is the tests didn't put the defects there in the first place, right? We've learned a little bit about testing software over the years. Those of us who are distinguished, like myself, who've been around for a long time, that have the gray hair, can remember back in the days when we used to code and code for months and months, and then we'd hand our code off to the testers to test the code. You remember that? Yeah? But then we learned, right? And we learned over time that months is not the right way to do this. It needs to be weeks. You know, we should test, like, write code for 5, 6, 7 weeks and then hand it off. What happened is over time we started to learn that the sooner we can hand off code to testers and get that feedback, the better off we'll all be. What you see in a lot of Agile teams is they try to do this very thing. If you can read that. They try to code a story, and as soon as that story is finished, they try to get it to somebody to test. Is that what you guys are doing? Yeah? Yep, no one's doing that? Yes, you're doing that? Okay, okay. Well, let's explore that for just a second. So here it is, right? We code, and then we test. And the theory goes that whenever that developer's finished or that pair's finished with that first story, they move right on to the second story and work on that while the first story is being tested. And when they're done, it's going to coincide with the first story being finished, and we just hand it off to the tester as well, and everything just works perfectly. Now, what could possibly go wrong with that? Defects and okay, dependencies? Okay. What I have seen going wrong the majority of the time is defects. And if we find a defect, what we end up having to do is we have to stop that second story, put it on hold, and go back and fix the first one. Right? At least I hope that's what you're doing. I know in some organizations they do something a little bit different. They create a story, put it in some queuing system or in some tracking system, and create a backlog item, and that gets queued up, and sooner or later it gets assigned to somebody who pulls it off, and then I hope you guys aren't doing something as crazy as that. I'm supposed to get a couple of chuckles because I know you are. The truth is that this so frequently happens again and again that we get somebody, we get this situation where every time code gets delivered to testers, it takes them about 2 minutes to find the first defect. Now, who here is a tester? If you're a tester, raise your hand. Have you seen that before? Does this picture look familiar? Yeah? So I call this the ping pong effect, okay? When the developers finish their code, they ping it over to the testers. The first thing that the testers do is they find a defect and they pong it back. And it just continues on, right? This is the way we do it. So how can we stop this?
Get rid of QA.
Well, actually, I might have something to say about that at the end of the presentation. How's that sound? Can we just ask the developers to stop writing defects? You think that'd work? Will you please stop writing? You think that'd work? Yeah? No? Yes? No?